Hi, my name's Paul, and this is my second review of the Canon 50D with the Magic Lantern RAW video hack. Well, the reason the 50D is even an option for RAW video is because it has one of these, a CF card and a CF card slot. Whereas most of the lower end Canon DSLRs use SD cards, which have a megabyte write limit of about 20. CF cards have at least a 70 megabyte write limit, with the 50D being the lowest and the 5D Mark III having a 95 megabyte per second write limit. And that's what really makes RAW possible on the CF card cameras compared to the SD card cameras, and why people are now buying the 50D, because it has a CF card slot. Since you can buy the camera used on eBay for about $400, or on Craigslist you can find some for about that price, and the 64 gig 1000X cards are about 120 bucks. That puts it right in the range of the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema camera on sale, the cheapest RAW camera you can buy. Which makes that really enticing to a lot of people. Since this is not stock video camera from Canon, and there's no video features from Canon, there's limitations. There's no internal audio, the moire is terrible, there's some rainbow aliasing, rainbow moire and aliasing that go on all the time. The camera overheats terribly, there's missed frames, and it stops, and it just takes a lot of time. There's been quite a few times where I've missed the shot that I really want to get because I'm using this camera. You're going to need to buy some extra batteries because this camera chews through them. You're going to get about an hour to an hour and a half per battery when you're shooting RAW video. Now, be careful which batteries you buy. I'd recommend the official Canon ones because I've had no issues with those. But when I've used third-party batteries, I've gotten skip frames and other things like that, but not when I'm using the official Canon battery. I don't know if those two things are correlated or if it was just the way in which I was using it, or user error on my part. That's usually pretty common, but I would look into getting the official Canon batteries because I've had less issues with those. And I'd also recommend getting a couple extra 64 gig CF cards. Now, the cheapest ones are these computer bay 64 gigabyte 1000X cards. Don't get the 32 gigabyte because people have reported lower write rates with those. At least get the 64, and these are the cheapest ones you can get, and I haven't had any issues with mine, but that's not to say that you won't, so do your research before you purchase a card. And one of the things to be careful of is the temperature when you're shooting. I shot during the summer and the winter with this camera because I've had it for about 6 months now. during the winter when it was snowing, I didn't have any issues with this, obviously. But in the summer when I shot a short film, the camera constantly overheated, and I had to continue to put it in a cooler of drinks just to cool it down, because we couldn't continue shooting because the camera kept overheating. It took us significantly longer to finish the project than what I wanted it to be because the camera kept overheating, and that's one of the things you're gonna need to keep in mind when using this camera. This camera cannot record 1080p in RAW. You can put it in crop mode and get it up to 1080p and record for a couple seconds, but there's a limit on the write rate of the CF cards of 70 megabytes per second, and the camera just can't write fast enough to the card to record 1080p. And even in that, the camera would overheat quicker. So I found myself shooting at about 1568 and 239 aspect ratio, because that's what I like most of my stuff to be in. So that saves me a little bit of the write speeds. But even then, I found the longest I could continuously record in RAW is 4 minutes. So you're gonna need to keep that in mind. And another thing to think about is 4 minutes of RAW with this camera is about 16 gigabytes of footage. So if you're gonna be recording a lot in one day, this is not really the way you wanna go unless you have multiple cards or a way to dump them and a ton of batteries. Now this camera does shoot H.264 if you need it to, and it can shoot at a very high bit rate if you set it to. Now that's great for color grading, but the images come out kind of soft and oversaturated, which also happens with the RAW footage, except in the RAW mode, they feel very sharp and very crisp and alive, compared to the H.264, which feels very, very soft and I don't know, it's just soft. That's all I can say about it. I also shot an interview using the H.264 of the 50D, and along with my GH1, and I found that the camera would record for a maximum of about 15 minutes before it stopped recording. Then you have to turn the camera off and take out the battery and reset it and that kind of thing, and start recording again. Well, it stunk because I missed some key shots that I would have liked to have two cameras for, but instead I only had my A camera for those key moments. And it kind of made it a little bit hard in editing, though it worked out well. You just have to keep an eye on it if you're going to do that. But then also, the no audio issue is what really makes interviews really hard to do with this camera. On the issue of aliasing and moire, this camera is the worst I've ever seen or used for those issues. The people at Mosaic Engineering have created a filter to put on in front of your sensor to reduce those issues. I don't know how well it works, but even then, that's a very expensive add-on onto what should be a very cheap camera to record RAW. So I don't know, I can't find myself justifying spending that much money on a filter for a camera that's already really cheap and has a ton of other issues other than just the aliasing and moire. This is not a professional camera, this is not an interview camera, this isn't even a C camera. This is a camera that you use for fun. I found myself shooting RAW a lot, but not on anything that is necessary. The quality from it is great, and I wish I could use it, but the issues of the moire make it not usable for nice looking professional shots. The issues of no audio make it really difficult to use for interviews, and the stopping of recording randomly makes it unusable for interviews. And so this is a camera that is for fun, and if you don't have obligations to finish the project, this is what the camera is for. It's for personal things and for personal short films. But despite all of those issues, it still produces some incredible looking images when it works well. And that's where the problem comes in. You have to decide whether you want to deal with those problems for the image quality, and then even if you capture those images, they may not come out the way that you want them to.